Greetings, everyone. This is Cassandra-Floyd, also known as the Daughter of the Fates, founder of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. Today, again, very brief, I'm going to be reading from Beyond God the Father Toward a Philosophy of Women's Liberation by Mary Daly. I'm trying to power through this book, y'all. I'm really trying to power through. So even if it's only 30 minutes or an hour that I can read, I'm going to try to read every day from now until we're done. Okay. So for those of you who've been starting or who've been following along, who've been reading along, or who have the book, we're starting on page 105 under the section entitled Transvaluation of Values, the End of Phallic Morality. Clues to fundamental differences between the Dionysian feminist ethic that is beginning to be lived and spoken about by women and the new morality of situation ethics can be found in the work of Joseph Fletcher, author of Situation Ethics. Fletcher insists upon labeling what he is doing as Christian situation ethics. One may well ask why the label Christian is necessary. What does it add to situation ethics? Fletcher himself responds to this question by saying that what makes it different from other moralities is a theological factor. Quote, the faith affirmation that God himself suffered for man's sake to reconcile the world in Christ, end quote. This means that however valuable many of the author's insights may be, there is here a basic affirmation of sacrificial love morality. Fletcher feels constrained to give priority to, quote, the desire to satisfy the neighbor's needs and not one's own. As the primordial victims of this unrealistic and destructive moral idea, women, once consciousness has been liberated, can see that this kind of new morality is very much like the old one. It does not move us beyond the good and evil of patriarchy because it does not get us out of the bind of scapegoat psychology. Greetings, everyone. Those who have actually been scapegoats and have said no to being victims any longer are in a position to say no to this modernized Christolatrous morality. Greetings, Jay Hunter, Golden Amethyst, Marie Lunar, Suki Florence. Okay, so let's see. Those who have actually been the scapegoats and have said no to being victims any longer are in a position to say no to this modernized Christolatrous morality in which love is always privatized and lacking a specific social context, and in which the structures of oppression are left uncriticized. Out of this no to the morality of victimization, which women share with all oppressed, come a yes to an ethic which transcends the most basic roles of stereotypes, those of masculine versus feminine. Janice Raymond points out that this ethic upholds as its ideal a dynamic metaphysical process of becoming, in which what has been traditionally circumscribed as masculine and feminine, what has been traditionally circumscribed as masculine and feminine is divested of its sex typing and categorization and is brought together into a new reality of being, a new wholeness of personhood. Far from being unisex in the sense of universal sameness, god damn. Far from being, quote, unisex in the sense of universal sameness, it involves a revolt against standardization. As another feminist writer has pointed out, terms such as masculinize or feminize, oh shit, terms such as masculinize and feminize would then come to mean a process of warping children to develop only half of their potentialities. Oh my God. There's a conversation we're going to have eventually that ain't nobody ready for. I'll leave it for another day. Okay. In these terms, a man of our culture, now seen as masculine, would be seen to have been masculinized. That is, to have lost half of himself. Do y'all hear what she just said? To be masculinized is to lose half of oneself. Before the androgynous world can begin to appear, however, a world in which even the term androgynous itself would be rendered meaningless because the word reflects the archaic heritage of psychosexual dualism. Damn. Women will have to assume the burden of castrating the phallic ethic, which appears as a feminine ethic or a passive ethic, by calling forth out of our experience a new naming in the realm of morality. To do this, it will be necessary to understand the dynamics of the false naming in the realm of ethics that has been encased in patriarchy's definitions of good and evil. In order to illustrate these prevalent mechanisms, I will examine their operation in relation to a specific problem that has been debated endlessly by male ethicists: the problem of abortion. Oh boy. Abortion and the powerlessness of women. In panels and discussions on religion and abortion, I have frequently cited the following set of statistics. 100% of the bishops who oppose, 100% of the bishops who oppose the repeal of anti-abortion laws are men, and 100% of the people who have abortions are women. These thoroughly researched statistics have the double advantage of being both irrefutable and entertaining, thereby placing the speaker in an inviolable situation vis-a-vis the audience. More important than this, however, is the fact that this simple juxtaposition of data suggests something of the context in which positions and arguments concerning the morality of abortion and the repeal of anti-abortion laws should be understood. To be comprehended adequately, they must be seen within the context of sexually hierarchical society. It is less than realistic, for example, to ignore the evidence suggesting that within Roman Catholicism, the official opposition to the repeal of anti-abortion laws is profoundly interconnected on the level of motivations, basic assumptions, and style of argumentation with positions on other issues. Such interconnected issues include birth control, divorce, the subordination of women in marriage and in convents, and the exclusion of women from the ranks of the clergy. The fact that all the major ethical studies of the abortion problem, both Catholic and Protestant, have been done by men itself, by men, excuse me, let me read that sentence over. The fact that all of the major ethical studies of the abortion problem, both Catholic and Protestant, have been done by men is itself symptomatic of women's oppressed condition. Since the condition of sexual caste has been camouflaged so successfully by since the condition of sexual caste has been camouflaged so successfully by sex role segregation, it has been difficult to perceive anti-abortion laws and anti-abortion ethical arguments within this context. Yet it is only by perceiving them within this total environment of patriarchal bias that it is possible to assess realistically how they function in society. If, for example, one-sided arguments using such loaded terminology as, quote, the murder of the unborn child are viewed as independent units of thought, unrelated to the kind of society in which they were formulated, then they may well appear plausible and cogent. However, once the fact of sexual caste and its implications have been unveiled, such arguments and the laws that they attempt to justify can be recognized as consistent with the rationalizations of a system that oppresses women, but incongruous with the experience and the needs of women. Come on in the room. Come on in the room. The number of male-authored essays on abortion that have appeared recently in liberal publications have been praised for their clarity and objectivity. Yet in many cases, I suggest, such articles give the illusion of clarity precisely because they concentrate upon some selected facts or data while leaving out of consideration the assumptions, attitudes, stereotypes, customs, and arrangements which make up the fabric of the world in which the problem of abortion arises. Moreover, upon closer examination, their objectivity can be seen as the detachment of an external judge who, first, does not share or comprehend the experience of the women whose lives are deeply involved, and second, has, by reason of his privileged situation within the sexual caste system, a built-in vested interest opposed to the interest of those most immediately concerned. Illustrative of this problem is an article by Professor George Huntston Williams of Harvard, in which he opposes, as model for the politics of abortion, a sacred condominium, a sacred condominium, in which the progenitors and the body politic share sovereignty in varying degrees and in varying circumstances. As he develops his thesis, it becomes evident that the woman's judgment is submerged in the condominium, and that the theory's pretensions to offer reasonable solutions are belied by the realities of sexual politics in the society in which we actually live. Basically, Professor Williams's theory ignores the fact that since men and women are not social equals, the representatives of the male-dominated body politic cannot be assumed to judge without bias. It also overlooks the fact that the progenitors do not have equal roles in the entire reproductive process, since it is obviously the woman who has the burden of pregnancy, and since under the prevailing social conditions, the task of upbringing is left chiefly and sometimes solely to the woman. It disregards the fact that the male sometimes deserts his wife or companion or threatens desertion in a situation of unwanted pregnancy. The inadequacies of Professor Williams's approach are evident in his treatment of the problem of abortion in the case of rape. He writes, quote, "Society's role would be limited to ascertaining the validity of the charge of rape. Here, the principals in the condominium could be at odds in assessing the case and require specialized arbitration. If this were the case, the medical and legal professions could be called upon together with that of social work. But even if rape is demonstrable, the mother may surely assent to the continuance of the misplaced life within her," end quote. What is left out in this eloquent multi-syllabic and seemingly rational discussion? First, it does not take into consideration the bias of a society which is male-controlled and serves male interests. Second, and implied in the first point, it leaves out the fact that it is very difficult to prove rape. In New York State, for example, for many years, corroborating evidence has been required to convict a man of rape. In some states, if the man accused of rape was known previously by the woman, this fact can be used in his defense. According to the laws of many states, it is impossible for a man to rape his wife. Moreover, women who have been raped and who have attempted to report the crime to the police frequently have reported that the police treated them with ridicule and contempt, insinuating that they must have worn provocative clothing or invited the attack in some way. Little or no attention is given to the fact that rapists often force their victims into disgusting and perverted acts under threat of death. The whole mechanism of, quote, blaming the victim thus works against women, adding to the trauma and suffering already endured. Nor are the police alone in taking this view of the situation. Their judgment reflects the same basic attitude of the sexist society, which is given physical expression in the rapist's act. The kind of spiritual counseling that women frequently receive within the sacred condominium is exemplified in an article by Bernard Herring, writing of the woman who has been raped. He says, quote, we must, however, try to motivate her to consider the child with love because of its subjective innocence, and to bear it in suffering through to birth, whereupon she may consider her enforced maternal obligation fulfilled. Oh my God. And may give over the child to a religious or governmental agency, after which she would try to resume her life with the sanctity that she will undoubtedly have achieved through the great sacrifice and suffering. Oh. Listen. Remember a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, I did a live. I don't even remember the live, but I was talking about how the real reason, because our conditioning is deep, the real reason that that people in general and men in particular are in an outrage, are angry, are venomous, have expressed complete and total thorough hatred of this new movement, this whole movement of women, quote, being deliberately child free, being deliberately celibate, and all of this stuff, decentering men and 4B and all of that stuff, all of myriad of ways that women are trying to seize control of their bodies and their power. The reason, even if they cannot express it, because they got 1,001 excuses for why they hate women, talking about, I ain't never having no babies. And then men's response is, that's selfish. That's what you here to do, to leave a legacy and all of this shit, right? The real reason, though they'll never be able to express it because they will maintain an allegiance with patriarchy. But the real reason they mad is this statement by this dude right here in 1973. For a woman to not have a baby in a patriarchal society with a cornerstone objective is the complete and total control of the reproductive process. See, the reproductive process is also the seed. It's also the origin of why patriarchy exists and why males have had a hate-filled response to women, is because it is the one last territory that they cannot reproduce in their own bodies. They're mad because they cannot give birth. I'm trying to tell you, that's why they steal all of the vestiges, those attributes that have been identified for thousands and thousands of years as attributes peculiar to the mother goddess. See, when they changed all of the mythologies, when they changed the literal constellations, they changed the names of the literal planets. You feel me? These were all attempts to not only destroy in the social fabric, in the social memory, the evidence of the Supreme Mother, but it was also an attempt by the son to absorb all of those attributes that were peculiar to the mother goddess and her daughters as females on earth. They had an attitude about the fact that there's still one thing, at least in mass, we can do that they cannot. And if they can't do it, they'll control it. If they can't give birth, they will control the birthing process, every aspect of it. This is what this whole question is about. The question of abortion, the question of, inaccessibility to safe birth control. This dude who just got arrested a few days ago, coming out after Trump was elected, talking about y'all bitches lose again, men win again. It's your body, our choice, and y'all will never be able to control your own bodies. That vitriol, that hatred comes from a very old place. Remember what Barbara Moore said in The Great Cosmic Mother, Rediscovering the Religion of the Earth, about that question? She said, at least the origin of every modern story, of every mythology everywhere on Earth, probably has its origin in the story of Enki in Babylon, in Sumeria, right? The son given birth by the divine mother, Inanna, Ishtar, right? The son given birth to, given all of his divine power by his mother, not satisfied with the power bestowed on him by his mother. So it became his primary task in life to subdue and eventually murder his mother in an attempt to absorb all of her power. And every story since that moment has been reproduced with the simultaneous murder of the murder of the mother and the attempt by her son to absorb her power. And if he can't absorb her power, he will control her body and manipulate her power like a bit in a horse's mouth, riding it along, directing it as it sees fit through brutality. Feel me? That's what he just admitted to. He was like, look, for y'all, so that's what I'm saying. The reason all these dudes mad, and the reason even you hear a lot of content creators talking about, like, damn, why so many women come up on my page mad at me because I've decided that I'm not going to have children. That's not my future. That's not my lot in life. That's not my destiny. I'm not going to have children. I'm going to remain child free because I like to do things. I like to travel. She's like, all these women come into my inbox with more vitriol than even the men, mad because their life choice has imprisoned them. Mad. The reason the women are mad, the reason the men are mad about women making a public declaration of remaining celibate or remaining child free is because, like I told you a few weeks ago in this other live, birth in all of our minds is the debt we must pay for being born female. It is the debt. It is the perpetual punishment that every woman needs go through as evidence that she too has paid her debt for the sin of her filthy mama Eve. For the sin of Eve that condemned us all. We all must suffer a painful childbirth. That's why that's the subconscious shit, because you've been seeing videos lately of like the dude who went, the woman who went live because her husband refused to buy ibuprofen for their 12-year-old daughter who was suffering from severe menstrual cramps. Oh, that's just what she's supposed to go through. That's what he said. Where that came from? Is it just him being a malignant male? That's his indoctrination. He learned that from the Bible. And if he was Jewish, he learned it from the Torah. And if he was Muslim, he learned that shit from the Quran. Suffering is our lot in life. Us bleeding from our vagina that we have reviled as some stain against us. We've accepted that this is this punishment that we, oh my God, my period. Oh my God. And that's our whole life spent condemning the beauty of what menstruation is supposed to mean and previously meant to us. Condemning our body every month for its betrayal of us through the menstrual process. You feel me? And so that we supposed to suffer through our menstrual cycle. And once we finally get pregnant, we supposed to suffer in childbirth. So you see the same thing. Men, patriarchal men, refusing on behalf of their wife, speaking for their wife. Like, what's the girl name? The trad wife who was the ballerina wife. Remember? And The only time she was able to have pain medication during the birth of their 7 children was when he couldn't show up to the hospital. That's their condition. That's their religion that convinced him that it was okay for him to deny his wife pain relief during the delivery of their 7 children. This is where it comes from. He said it right here. He is like, look, even if you get raped, you feel me? That innocent baby ain't got shit to do with it, you feel me? So you need to just take up your cross. You need to take up your cross and go ahead and suffer through to the birth, and then turn the baby over to the state, and then do whatever you need to do, to try to heal from it, knowing that you've done a great deed. You've achieved a great thing through great sacrifice and suffering. That's what he said. So I'm telling y'all, we have to see deeper than the narrative that's being presented to us, because every narrative is shallow as hell. It's superficial. It's so shallow. You feel me? The reason that they hate to see women out here living on their own terms is because their Abrahamic God has told them from the day that they were born that it is our lot in life to suffer. It is our lot in life to suffer. And that if we are not suffering, something wrong with that. Something wrong with that. We inherently evil when we choose not to suffer. When we choose to take the path of least resistance. When we choose to sidestep struggle love. What kind of woman are you if you don't support, a man dreams? You feel me? Like, you take him as he is. You feel me? You take him as he is. And then you help him come up. And then when he come up, you too will come up. But even though that never happens, we still believe the hype. Because you know what? Struggle love is our lot in life. Struggle love is our lot in life. At least according to our conditioning. You understand? So anyway, let me keep reading. Friar Hearing adds that if she has already, quote, yielded to the violent temptation to rid herself of the effects of her experience, quote, we can leave the judgment of the degree of her sin to a merciful God, end quote. Those who are familiar with spiritual counseling have some idea of what could be implied in the expression, try to motivate her. Despite Friar Hearing's intention to be compassionate, his solution is not adequate. The paternalistic and intimidating atmosphere of spiritual counseling is not generally conducive to free and responsible decision-making, and can indeed result in enforced maternal obligation. The author does not perceive the irony of his argument, which is visible only when one sees the environment of the women's predicament. She lives in a world in which not only the rapist, but frequently also the priest view her as an object to be manipulated, in one case physically, and in the other case psychologically. Machismo religion, in which only men do spiritual counseling, asks her to endure a double violation, adding the rape of her mind to the rape of her body. As Mrs. Robinson of the once popular hit song knew, quote, every way you look at it, you lose, end quote. Yes, Tajali, yes. Feminist ethics yet to be developed because women have yet to be free enough to think out our own experience will differ from all of this in that it will refuse to give attention merely to the isolated physical act involved in abortion, and will insist upon seeing this within its social context. Christian moralists generally have paid attention to context when dealing with such problems as killing in self-defense and in war. Oh shit. Well. Christian moralists generally have paid attention to context when dealing in such problems as killing in self-defense or in war. They have found it possible to admit the existence of a just war within which the concept of, quote, murder generally does not apply. How convenient. How convenient. Oh, shit. Yeah. Whoa. Oh, hold on. Huh. Yo. How convenient. Christian moralists generally have paid attention to context when dealing with such problems as killing in self-defense and in war. They have found it possible to admit the existence of a just war within which the concept of murder generally does not apply, and have permitted killing in self-defense and in the case of capital punishment. You heard? They have allowed to pass unheeded the fact that by social indifference, a large proportion of the Earth's population is left to die of starvation in childhood. Listen. All of these situations are viewed as at least more complex than murder. Yet, when the question of abortion is raised, frequently it is the only isolated material act that is brought into focus. The traditional maxim that circumstances affect the morality of an action is all but forgotten, or else rendered non-operative through a myopic view of the circumstances. Feminists perceive the fact of exceptional reasoning in the case of abortion as related to the general situation. They ask the obviously significant but frequently overlooked question, just who is doing the reasoning and who is forced to bear unwanted children? Feminist ethics will see a different and more complex human meaning in the act of abortion. Rather than judging universally in fixed categories of, quote, right and wrong, it will be inclined to make graded evaluations of choices in such complex situations as those in which the question of abortion concretely arises. It will attempt to help women to orchestrate the various elements that come into play in the situation, including the needs of the woman as a person, the rights of women as an oppressed class, the requirements of the species in adapting to changing conditions such as overpopulation, the positive obligations of the woman as the mother of other children or as a professional, the negative aspects of her situation in a society which rewards the production of unwanted children with shame and poverty. It will take into consideration the fact that since the completely safe and adequate means of birth control does not yet exist, women are at the mercy of our reproductive systems. Ho, 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 ho. Whoa. At this moment in history, the abortion issue has become a focal point for dramatic conflict between the ethic of patriarchal authoritarianism and the ethic of courage to confront ambiguity. With concrete decisions, when concrete decisions have to be made concerning whether or not to have an abortion, a complex web of circumstances demands consideration. There are no adequate textbook answers. Essentially, women are saying that because there is ambiguity surrounding the whole situation, and because sexually hierarchical society is stacked against women, abortion is not appropriately a matter of criminal law. In our society, as it is, no laws can cover the situation justly. Abortion reform generally works out in a discriminatory way and is not an effective deterrent to illegal abortions. Thousands of women who have felt desperate enough to resort to criminal abortions have been subjected to psychological and physical barbarities, sometimes resulting in death. The emerging feminist ethic has as its primary emphasis not self-abnegation, but self-affirmation in community with others. Damn. Woo. The kind of suffering that it values is that which is endured in acting to overcome an oppressive situation, rather than that which accompanies abject submission to such a situation. Some of the essentially unjust mechanisms operative in the arguments of phallic ethicists on abortion have already been illustrated in the passages from Williams and Herring. These include arguing out arguing out of the hidden false assumptions that women and men have equal roles in the entire reproductive process, that women and men have an equal voice in the body politic, that women have completely free choice in the matter of sexual behavior and its consequences, that women have an adequately safe means of birth control, and that passive acceptance of suffering in the victim's role is the better choice. There are also other devices among these in the domino theory or wedge argument. There are also other devices. Among these is the domino theory or wedge argument. Quote, if the fetus can be destroyed, who will be the next victim? If the fetus can be destroyed, who will be the next victim? Professor Ralph Potter writes, when a fetus is aborted, no one asks for whom the bell tolls. No bell is tolled, but do not feel indifferent and secure. The fetus symbolizes you and me and our tenuous hold upon a future here at the mercy of our fellow men. End quote. To this argument, Jean McRae has appropriately responded that if no bell tolls for the fetus, perhaps this is because the death of the fetus is significantly different from that of a more actualized human being. She also makes another observation that is very much to the point, namely that the question of abortion has to do with a unique struggle between two living beings, for it is only in the case of unwanted pregnancy that the body and the whole well-being of a person is controlled by another being. Oh, shit. Yet another device is what we might call the unanswerable argument. This consists in posing such a question as, when does human life begin? Since no unanimous response is forthcoming, the conclusion drawn is that women with unwanted pregnancies must passively submit to the situation until they can produce the impossible answer. Still another tactic is that employed by John Nonan in asserting that the moral condemnation of abortion has been an almost absolute value in history. The question that is unasked is, whose history? The fact that history written by men has ignored the historical experience of women is not taken into account. Indeed, it is clear that even within Christian societies, multitudes of women have by their actions repudiated the assumption that the life of the fetus is an absolute value. The argument that all or most of these women have suffered great guilt feelings is first of all false as an alleged statement of fact. And second, it is dishonest in not recognizing that even if such guilt feelings exist, in some cases, they may be explained by social conditioning. Woo! Let's go. Moreover, there are societies in which abortion is accepted without question by both men and women. As the movement for the repeal of anti-abortion laws began to gain momentum in the United States, it became evident that a situation of open warfare was developing between the upholders of religious and civil patriarchal power and feminism in this country. This has a tragic aspect, since fixation upon the abortion issue represents neither the epitome of feminist consciousness nor the peak of religious consciousness. As for feminist consciousness, abortion is hardly the final triumph envisioned by all or the final stage of the revolution. There are deep questions beneath and beyond this, such as, why should women be in situations of unwanted pregnancy at all? Some women see abortion as a necessary measure for themselves, but no one sees it as the fulfillment of her greatest dreams. Many would see abortion as a humiliating procedure. Even the abortifacient pills, when perfected, can be seen as a protective measure, a means to an end, but hardly as the total embodiment of liberation. Few, if any, feminists are deceived in this matter, although male proponents of the repeal of abortion laws tend to often be short-sighted in this respect, confusing the feminist revolution with the sexual revolution. I will discuss this confusion later in this chapter. In regard to religious consciousness, surely lobbying to prevent the repeal of unjust laws cannot be its highest manifestation. A community that is the expression of authentic spiritual consciousness that is, a living, healing, prophetic religious community, would not cut off the possibility for women to make free and courageous decisions, either by lobbying to prevent the repeal of anti-abortion laws or by psychological manipulation. It would try to hear what women are saying and to support demands for the repeal of unjust laws. Women did not arbitrarily choose abortion as a part of the feminist platform. Come on. Listen. Listen. Come on. Listen. She said, women did not arbitrarily choose abortion as a part of the feminist platform. It has arisen out of the realities of the situation. On its deepest level, the issue is not as different from the issue of birth control as many, particularly liberal Catholics, would make it appear. There are deep questions involved which touch the very meaning of human existence. Are we going to let nature take its course or take the decision into our own hands? In the latter case, who will decide? What the women's movement is saying is that decisions will be made affecting the processes of nature, and that women as individuals will make the decisions in matters most intimately concerning ourselves. I think that this, on the deepest level, is what authoritarian religion fears. Surely its greatest fear is not the destruction of life, as its record on other issues reveals. She says, surely its greatest fear is not the destruction of life, as its record on many other issues reveals. As Lawrence later has shown, the lobbying power employed by the Catholic Church against abortion has been tremendous. It has available vast economic resources, untaxed funds used for propagandizing, despite the illegality of using tax-free money for campaigning. Oh, well. Let's see. Later refers to it as the most powerful tax-deductible lobby in history. It has used the Catholic school system and such organizations as the Knights of Columbus to channel opposition against the abortion law repeal. Later points out that it has made political alliances, pointing specifically to the alliance between Richard Nixon and Cardinal Cook of New York on the issue. Among the instruments used by the church in this religious war has been language. There has been a planned and concerted tactic on the part of the hierarchy to use inflammatory language such as murder rather than abortion and child rather than fetus, and to make the sort of odious comparisons that call to mind the massacre of the Jews by the Nazis. A predictable effect of such activity, when it is seen in combination with other sexist policies, is a relocation of women's spiritual energy outside the domain of hierarchical established religion. If by a kind of reductionism, one could imagine the essential goal of feminism to be the repeal of anti-abortion laws, the struggle might be simplified to the dimensions of women's liberation versus the official Catholic Church. Then it might appear that liberal Protestantism would offer an alternative channel for female religious activity. However, since feminism cannot be reduced to an isolated issue, and since the very issue of abortion is revelatory of the fact that feminism is not merely an issue, but rather a new mode of being, it is becoming more and more clear to feminist consciousness that the faded authoritarianism of the liberal churches is hardly more acceptable to free women than the pomp and power of the more obvious enemy. Wow. You, for a community really expressive of authentic religious consciousness, would coincide with the women's movement in pointing beyond abortion to more fundamental solutions, working toward the development of a social context in which the problem of abortion would be unlikely to arise. As catalyst for social change, it would foster research into adequate and safe means of birth control. As educative force, it would make available information about the better means now in existence, for example, vasectomy. Most fundamentally, as a prophetic and healing community, it would work to eradicate sex role socialization and the sexual caste system itself, which in many ways works toward the entrapment of women in solutions of being burdened with unwanted pregnancies. I think it should be clear that authentic religion would point beyond abortion, not by instilling fear and guilt, but by inspiring the kind of personal, social, and technological creativity that can, in the long run, make abortion a non-problem. Come on. Patriarchal power structures, whether civil or ecclesiastical, of course, do not operate in this humanizing way. The blindness induced by them is revealed in the incongruous and biased statements of those who serve them, many of whom are in highly responsible positions and are well educated. A Massachusetts legislator argued that, quote, those who must play must pay. Richard Nixon stated, quote, further, unrestricted abortion policies or abortion on demand, I cannot square with my personal belief in the sanctity of human life, including the life of the yet unborn, end quote. Writing in the Boston Globe, a physician made comparisons between abortion and the German mass murders of Jews. Similar comparisons have been made by Brent Bozell of the Catholic Triumph magazine. A poignant response to this comparison was made by Regina Barshak, a Jewish woman who, as a teenager, was incarcerated in Auschwitz and then became the sole survivor of a large mass murdered family. Ms. Barshak wrote of the callous exploitation of these ignoble events. In temperate terms, she reminded readers of the differences between a safe medical procedure on fertilized zygotes and, on the other hand, the deliberate sadism performed upon fully formed bodies and the souls of active, fully conscious, loving human beings. She pointed out that the voices of the prestigious Vatican leaders were not heard, quote, on behalf of these tortured lives. You heard? She said, while all the people in the Vatican are staging an outcry comparing abortion to the Holocaust, she said, at the same time that these human beings, these fully developed human beings with fully active souls and consciousness who were loving people, their cries and their voices were unheard and unaddressed on behalf of the tortured lives of fully evolved human beings. Meanwhile, the Vatican becomes the primary vocal voice in opposition to abortion, to what she called fertilized zygotes, while at the same time, the Vatican was silent during the Holocaust. That's what she said. That's what she said. That's what she said. That's what she said. Basically, she was saying, how dare you compare abortion to the Holocaust when y'all was silent during the execution of Jews in Germany? That's what she said. Let's see what time it is. Oof, I got to get ready to go. I got to get ready to go. Let's see. The most unholy trinity. The most unholy trinity. Guess what the most unholy trinity is? Rape, genocide, and war. The first dimension of what I have baptized as the most unholy trinity is rape. It is clear that there has always been a connection between the mentality of rape and the phenomenon of war, although there is much unseeing of this connection when the war is perceived as just, oh. Listen, y'all. Y'all better act like you heard. Listen, what have we been talking about incessantly, y'all? This culture of absolution is toxic. in every way. What she just said is another example of absolutionism. She says, isn't it convenient that the greatest weapon of war is rape? And it is easy to see unless the war is deemed just. Unless the war is deemed just, unless it's the good guys versus those evil others over there, unless it's our God versus your infidel God, It's considered everything that happens in war, if the war is deemed just by those who hold closest proximity to the agreed upon image of God among the group, among the whole, everything that happens within that war is absolved. You feel me? Yo, everything becomes fair game. Everything is absolved. Isn't that what happened to the natives? We can look back and people still are relatively unmoved by what happened to the indigenous people of North America and South America. It's like they're unmoved. Oh, well, that happened a long time ago. You feel me? I mean, it's unfortunate, but they're relatively unmoved when they read these horror stories about what happened to indigenous women and children. Relatively unmoved, detached from it. You know why? Because the white world, the European world, has long been since granted absolution for this crime against the indigenous of the Western Hemisphere. That's what the church did. The church granted them a collective, unending shield of absolution. They don't feel like there's anything they have to pay for in the massacre of indigenous people. They ain't got to pay no reparations. The church forgave us a long time ago. It was manifest destiny. You feel me? It was just what had to happen in order for the future to unfold. Don't nothing pass. Don't nothing happen on earth without passing before the sight of God. God got to approve it. Everything that happened, God approved that. You feel me? We don't know the why. We just have to trust that's what God said had to happen. In order for people to get to know the Lord Jesus Christ, their Savior. In order for these devil infidel black folks, black-skinned people in Africa to know the Lord Jesus Christ as their personal Savior, they had to be enslaved. It was the only way it could happen. You understand? In order for the Asian world to get to know, to be exposed to the mercy of their Lord Jesus Christ and their personal Savior, they had to be colonized. You feel me? They had to be the victims of the British initiated opium wars that decimated the population. That had to happen in order. And in these Europeans, in their divine wisdom, because they was most close to God. See, we have to thank the white people because that was the only way we was going to know our Lord Jesus Christ as our personal Savior. Feel me? Anyway, an example. This question, I'm gonna beat this into y'all head. I'm gonna drill it in. Y'all gonna hear me talk about this forever and a day till it becomes popular narrative across the damn scope of things. Really, spiritually, religiously, politically, economically. This is the language we have to start talking. Can't talk about nothing happening in the economic world without talking about the culture of what? The three pillars that prop up everything wrong in the world. What are the three pillars again? Sadomasochism. Well, sadomasochistic asceticism. Sadomasochistic asceticism, martyrdom, and absolution. Those three things are the ingredients that are embedded in everything you see wrong with the world. Sadomasochistic asceticism. Somebody has to suffer and somebody has to be the ordained disseminator of suffering, because you can't suffer without somebody imposing suffering. That's the sadomasochistic aspect of this, quote, cross that we must bear, asceticism. Asceticism is the willful acceptance of suffering to show devotion to a higher being. That's what asceticism is. Whether it's self-imposed suffering, like beating yourself or all that stuff they used to do, obvious asceticism, right? But Mary Daly in Pure Lust calls it sadomasochistic asceticism because sadomasoch, the suffering that you must demonstrate. Because see, the Bible say what? If Jesus had to suffer, nigga, you got to suffer too. If Jesus had to suffer to bear the weight of all of our sins, it's the least that we can do is suffer for him, suffer to show our devotion and gratitude for his great burden, to suffer on behalf of all of us in our filthy ass ways. You feel me? And so the more devoted you are, the more extreme you display your willingness to carry your cross, to endure suffering. You understand? That's for the colonized. Because you see, those who have a closer proximity to the image of God in everybody's head, they don't have to bear their cross. They can be good Christians and millionaires. They can be good Christians and go on vacation once a quarter. They can be good Christians and be opulent. They can be good Christians and don't have no real challenges in their life. Because their proximity to the God accepted in all of our images absolves them from having to do that. They don't have to do that, see. It's us infidels. It's us colored people. It's us vagina people. It's us people holding goddamn uteruses in our body. It's those others of us who refuse to comply to the binary definition of what it means to be a whole human being in the world. You feel me? I'm talking about our LGBTQIA plus brethren and sistren and however they express themselves in the world. It's all of us that suffering is reserved for. See, because we are not in proximity to the accepted image of God in the world, it is us that is required to do the suffering. And those who hold closest proximity to the image, the agreed upon image of God in the world, because Christianity is still the world's greatest population in terms of numbers. So the majority of people on earth see the image of Jesus with long flowing hair and blue eyes as the universal hippie, as the one, right? The mediator between those who have to suffer and those who in closer proximity to the God of to the God of our imagination. They don't have to suffer. They can be fully participatory in the suffering of others because they are granted automatic absolution. That's why they don't feel guilty. That's why they don't feel guilty when they commit crimes against others. That's why they're not plagued with guilt when they do harm to others. We call it psychopathy or sociopathy. Child, this is religious. This is religious indoctrination. You can call it whatever mental illness you want to call it. The reason they do not feel empathy when they commit crimes against others, the reason they don't feel empathy when they move into some community of color, knowing that their presence is automatically going to change the lives of everybody in that community and decimate that community, the reason they don't feel guilty about that, the reason they don't feel guilty about any crime that they commit, and we stay confused because we automatically want to reduce it to some psychological mental weakness on their part. That's what we do. We always, quote, try to pathologize this sickness without a circular worldview, a spherical, a complete and thorough worldview of where this, quote, psychopathy comes from, where this, quote, sociopathy comes from, this, quote, why they don't have no empathy. And we stay perpetually confused by what we are seeing. The quote psychopathy, the quote sociopathy is because their indoctrination, the same indoctrination that they receive, the same Bible that we read, teaches us something completely different than it does them. It actually, you know what? I'm wrong. It teaches us the same thing. But what it has us do is recognize right away that we are the ones deserving of suffering because of our the fact that we are further away from the image that has been accepted by all of us of God in our head and in our consciousness. You feel me? They read the same Bible and say, oh, I am most close in proximity to the accepted image of God in the consciousness of everybody on earth. I'm most in proximity, so it must be, just like in the Old Testament, my divine, not only right, my divine responsibility. My divine responsibility. What did Jesus say? Because y'all forget, y'all see Jesus as a hippie. You feel me? What did Jesus say in the New Testament? He said, I did not come to bring, I did not come to the earth to bring peace, but the sword. I came to bring the sword. That's what Jesus said. That's what your hippie said. He said, I came to bring the sword. What does that mean? What is it? The sword for who? The sword to do what? What is the sword used for, if not to slay? What does the sword do, if not to defend against who in your mind you perceive as other and undeserving of life? What is the sword to do other than that? Jesus out his own mouth said, I did not come here to bring peace, but the sword. I came to bring the sword. That's what I did. Yeah, he did. He said it several times. What did he say when he knew his jig was up, his time was coming? He said, look, I'm gonna send y'all out here in this mission to civilize these infidels, to civilize these heathens. You feel me? Spread the word after I leave up out of here. You feel me? I'm gonna send you out as sheep among wolves. And so because the Negro preachers will stop right there, that you're supposed to just suffer. The reason the Negro preachers stop there is because your role as a devotee to Jesus is to suffer. That's why they never complete that statement to you. They will never complete that statement to you, knowing that your ass won't go and read the Bible yourself. So he'll say, I'll send you out as sheep among wolves. And that's where they stop. Because Negro, it's your responsibility to suffer. But I done been to white churches where they complete the statement because for them, it means something different. I send you out as sheep among wolves. So if you do not have a sword, sell your cloak and get one. That's what the white people understand. You see, that's the version of the Bible that they receive. Is that it is their divine right as the right arm of the God in heaven to be the disseminators of suffering to those unholy, inaccessible, heathen folk out there who do not have this close proximity to the accepted image of God in their brain. You heard what I just said? I hope you rocking with me. I hope you just heard what I said. Stop acting confused. Stop trying to appeal, because I'm still saying the same thing I have been saying for 4 years. White people who have accepted the same Bible that we have, because the Bible is this instrument meant to do something for someone over all of us, it had to create a split in our own spirit and our own consciousness. So white people, in their proximity to power, and I'm talking about even oppressed white people in Europe, when they see that the only people that had power, the only people that experienced happiness, the only people that had access was the nobility and was the church. So this image of power in their mind, and God must be on their side because they got everything. This is what they grew up with. This was what their process contributed to for 500 years of Inquisition. 500 years of Inquisition helped them to understand that God must be on their side because they got everything. And I too must do these things, these terrible things that the nobility in church is doing in order to receive God's favor. In order to receive God's favor. In order to receive God's favor, I too must have to do these terrible things that have been done to me and my family to receive God's favor, because they can't be wrong because they got everything. They can't be wrong because they got all the power. This is the indoctrination of the masses of European people before setting out into the world. So when they find somebody that the church has said is lower than them and they ain't got shit, when the church done said there's somebody out here worse than you poor people, worse than you poor prior Celtics and prior Nordics and prior Britannians and all of this shit, there's somebody actually worse than y'all. Y'all heathens. Y'all infidels. So look, what we can do is we can give y'all a little bit more. You feel me? We'll make it so that you can sell your labor by making the chains and making the boats and doing this thing. And then what we'll do, if you start to feel guilty about the things that we are charging you to do, we'll just grant you collective, unending absolution. And that's exactly what the church did in the form of papal bulls. That the natives of North America today are still fighting like hell to get so-called progressive Pope Francis to remove off the books of the Vatican, of the Holy Roman Catholic Church. And he still refuses. The papal bull is going to stay. I feel bad, you know what I'm saying, about the 3,000 babies that we found, you know, in unmarked graves at the resident schools in Canada. That's bad. I feel bad about that. We still are not removing the papal bulls that reduced you to heathens who were outside the sight of God. We ain't gonna do that. Because to do that is to expose everything wrong we have done. We ain't gonna do that. You know what I'm saying? We'll make a little gesture. You feel me? I'm trying to put y'all on game right now. Because if you start to try to understand what's happening to you economically, if you try to understand what's happening to you politically, if you try to understand what's happening to you mentally, what's happening to your health, what's happening to your community, why gentrification just seems to have no challenge or opposition to it whatsoever, everything identifiably wrong in your life. If you try to understand that shit without understanding the very integral, foundational role that these religious institutions have played in crafting and shaping and molding your consciousness and your spirit to accept that punishment is your lot in life. Suffering is what you are required to do. Suffering is what you are required to do. And then if you are to suffer, if you are to be the recipient of suffering so that you too may possibly in the future have access to heaven, there has to be a divinely ordained disseminator of that suffering. Somebody has to cause your suffering. That's the only way that can happen. That's why the police. That's why the state. That's why the goddamn court rooms and judges and shit. That's why the military. That's why just what she said right here, which got me on the shit in the first place, that it is impossible to see that any of these terrible, 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 unimaginable things that happen in war as bad when the war is deemed just. That's why Bush had to come out with a declaration to convince Americans to accept the necessity of invading Afghanistan in 2001. What did he come out and say? As front page of the New York Times, we are good and they are evil. And that was the horn. That was the trumpet. That's all y'all needed to hear to say, oh damn, he right. Maybe we do need to go and invade Afghanistan. He needed that that was the whistle. That, you know what I'm talking about? How everybody is a goddamn sleeper cell, and how Christianity, Islam, Judaism have been the process through the indoctrination since infancy, that when you become an adult, and even if you done left that shit 100 years ago, they got to say these catchphrases, and guess what? That shit will trigger. You'll be like, I told y'all. I've been out of Christianity since I was 24 years old, and there have been moments in my life, an atheist for 12 years, and there are moments in my life where that bullshit crept up out of my goddamn consciousness and was like, but what if you wrong? I mean, what if hell is real? What if you wrong? And then I have to shake the shit out of myself, like, where the fuck did that come from? I thought that shit was gone. When I entered into the practice of Ifa as a devotee, and every now and again, 15 years after I done left the church, that shit would creep up. But what if I'm wrong? But what if I'm wrong? Damn, I don't want to bust the doors of hell wide open. Like, what if I'm wrong? And then I have to shake the shit out of myself. Like, where the fuck that shit came from? I thought that shit was long gone. That's why I'm always talking about the need for a goddamn global exorcism. You ain't winning shit without deconstructing this madness that exists in human beings. Not only their brain, baby, not only their mind, not only their consciousness and their spirit, in their blood cells, in their DNA. The shit is deep. The shit is deep. I will still watch The Color Purple and cry crocodile tears when what was her name? Shug Avery sing God Trying to Tell You Something at the end. I still every time I hear it, every time cry like a full-on baby, sobbing whole big ass ugly tears. That is your conditioning. And that ain't your conditioning just in your spirit, in your mind, in your consciousness. That shit is etched in your flesh. It is a part of what has happened to human beings for 2,000 goddamn years. That shit is etched in. So when I talk about a deep and thorough need for a fully complete exorcism from the total whole human being, I mean that shit. I mean that shit. I mean that shit. baby. So Robbie McCarty say, I feel like I be feeling like I'm in a wrestling match with the spirit of Jesus when I'm going through warfare. Listen. Looks like I'll be shaking the shit out of myself for the rest of my life. Remember what I told you? This old head, my mentor when I was in the African People's Socialist Party, Gaida Cambone. I love this woman. And she was the oldest person in the party. She had been in the party her whole adult life, 40 some years. And this woman, the first thing she ever taught me was, while white power exists, the first war you are going to be staging every day of your life while it exists is the war against the cracker in your brain. That's a quote. That's a quote. The first war that you are going to be fighting every day when your feet hit the floor. I don't care how long you've been in the party. I don't care how many books you done read. I don't care how much you done. While white power remains, while imperialism remains, the first war you're going to have to stage every day until it's done is the war against the cracker in your own brain. Now, I'm going to tell you the weakness in that story that she told me when I was a kid, or when I was younger in the party. The weakness is that the party was an atheistic organization that refused to acknowledge the integral role that the church has played in the emergence of colonialism, in the emergence of imperialism, in the emergence of white power itself. So like I said, as brilliant as Omali Yeshitela is, as brilliant as Gaida Cambone is, as brilliant as the party's line is, something in my spirit told me I had met the limitations of what I was able to understand and how I was able to evolve in that organization. And it was the walk with the mother that helped me to understand the weakness and the incompleteness of that analysis by my mentor, Gaida Cambone. The reason that there was an inherent weakness is because of this rejection, not only of the intimate and integral role that these conditioning religions play in the erection of the state in the first place. The state didn't emerge in a vacuum. The state emerged as a consequence of an empire that had already existed long before the emergence of the state. The state becomes a necessary instrument to protect the religious institutions, to protect the nobility, to protect the divinely ordained representatives of the great war god in the sky. The state is their instrument that guarantees their longevity through violence. You understand? And so the reason that these hardcore revolutionary ultra democratic, what do they call it, democratic centralist organizations, they have they goddamn underpinning in Marxist Leninist philosophy with a little bit of Mao and a little bit of Fidel and a little bit of Ho Chi Minh scattered the fuck up in there. The reason they all missed the boat, and ain't nobody gonna say it, the reason they all missed the boat, and the reason that none of their revolutionary movements were completely thorough and successful, is because of this thing that we're talking about right now. Fidel did it. He allowed the religious institutions to remain even after a victorious overthrow of the state. Even after a successful overthrow of, as a matter of fact, remember when they were finally successful in a revolution, you remember the picture of Fidel, young, good-looking Fidel, and they do this ceremony to finally make him the president of Cuba, and the picture that sent shockwaves around the world was during his inauguration. 3 white doves came and posted up on his shoulders, and all of these super religious people around the world, Catholics, were like, oh my God, this is a sign. This is a sign. The white dove of the Catholic Church. You understand? The reason that these revolutionary struggles were not thorough and complete, the reason that Cuba suffers today is because patriarchy remains in the form of these religious institutions. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Patriarchy remains. So you might beat the state, but while your brain is fucked up, patriarchy remains. It does. And that's no future. Patriarchy remains. And while patriarchy remains, all the other isms remain. Ain't that what they're talking about in Cuba? I hear all these indigenous and black-skinned and even white-skinned Cubans done staged this successful revolution against the most oppressive enemy in the history of the world, and they still got racism. They still got colorism. Even as they done banded together to overthrow their opposition, they still got colorism and racism and sexism. Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. Why? So I'm telling you, this shit here, and then, child, I'm supposed to be gone. I'm supposed to be gone. You feel me? Anyway, yeah. That's why. Let me tell you about how much this has messed up our brains, y'all. You hear stories. I've heard stories because I come from a military family. Both sides of my family are hardcore. When I say hardcore Christians, and hardcore servants of the state. I come from a military family. Hardcore military family. Is that a contradiction? Nope. No, it's not. Because the military is the preserver of the ideology of Christianity. Yes, the hell it is. That's what it was designed to do. I just told you the papal bulls were written to not only secure the wealth for the white world, and not just the white world in general, because it wasn't like the queens and the kings and the church was sending these poor white people out to amass wealth for themselves too. Amass wealth for us and we'll grant you absolution. So it wasn't like they was trying to disseminate the wealth that they were stealing from everybody else among the poor white people in Europe. They weren't trying to do that. They was like, look, we'll just give you a little bit and we'll make sure that you don't feel guilty about the shit that we asking you to do as our executioners in the new world. That's what they were. They were the executioners of the new world. See, they didn't have to wear the big black hood though. You feel me? They didn't have to wear the big black hood. Now you too, great explorers, can be the executioners for the will of the church. And in order to make sure, just like I told you about the executioner, I'm telling you, the reason he could go to sleep every night after executing witches and executing heretics and doing all kind of terrible stuff, chopping off people's head and all this kind of stuff, the reason he could go to sleep every night, live a good life, you feel me, have a wife and kids and everything, is because the question of his salvation never came into question, because he is the executionary arm of the church. He conducts the will of the church. So there is no guilt for him to feel. He becomes the sword that Jesus talked about when he said, I did not come here to bring peace, but the sword. The executioner becomes the sword of Jesus Christ. You understand? The great explorers become the sword of Jesus Christ. You feel me? The what you call them? The pioneers that came out west and was given money for every Native American scout they would turn into the government. They became the sword of Jesus Christ. There was nothing that they should feel guilty about. This is what our job is to be the divinely ordained executioners of suffering, disseminators of suffering to the heathen infidels who are outside the sight of God in the first place. Trying to give y'all a word. So if you're trying to understand anything, somebody start talking hyper pontifical political jargon, economic jargon to help you understand the complications and the ins and outs of why policy moved this way and that, tell them, fuck you, I ain't trying to hear that shit. How does this shit factor into the 3 necessary pillars to uphold and solidify the goddamn state? Those pillars are what they have always been. Sadomasochistic asceticism, martyrdom, and absolution. That's it. And everything understandable in your life can fall within those three pillars. I promise you. Name a condition, name a circumstance, name some terrible observation of something wrong in the world, and I will tell you how it fits within the scope of these three foundational pillars that exist everywhere on earth. Whether you're Muslim, whether you are Judaistic practicing Jew, whether you are a Christian or a Catholic, you're a Methodist or a Buddhist or a Hindu or a Satanist or whoever the hell. Sadomasochistic asceticism, martyrdom, and absolution. Yes. Yep. That's it. This is the world. And trying to understand the world created, crafted deliberately to exploit the many at the to enrich the few at the expense of the many, to enrich the few through the necessary exploitation of the many. Why is exploitation necessary of the many? Because I just told you, sadomasochistic asceticism is a foundational pillar stone. It is a necessity for the uprightment, the holding up of religious institutions. Somebody has to be willing to suffer. Somebody has to be willing to suffer. This is why there's an aspect of martyrdom in that. Somebody has to be willing to suffer through the fucked up ideas in their head about why they deserve to suffer. Like, the reason we had to be enslaved is because, the Jews were slaves in Egypt. Though we have all the anthropological evidence now that shit never happened, we still accept that shit. Jews, practicing Judaistic Jews, still pray that prayer every year at Hanukkah. Ask me how I know. Thank you for delivering us from them evil ass Egyptians. You understand? Thank you for delivering us from them evil ass Egyptians. Appreciate you. And now IG ain't even gonna let me save my shit because it be trifling like that. You understand? Thank you for saving us from them evil ass Egyptians, them evil ass Negroes. And then this becomes the basis for forever. This becomes the basis for forever why it's okay to do terrible shit to Black people. Why it's okay to execute the most brutal kinds of circumstances on the continent right now. And inherent in that brutality, and why nobody on the earth care about that brutality, is the inherent believed wickedness of us Black-skinned people who did this terrible thing to the poor Hebrews. And I'm telling you because I know through witnessing, they still, even so-called progressive Jews, somebody say they can't hear me. Can you hear me now? One with fits. Anybody? I might have to stop it and redo it. But they still pray that right now today. Even though you can find no shortage of documentaries that have been done by the History Channel, by the BBC, by anthropologists, world-renowned, well-known anthropologists and archaeologists who say that there is no evidence anywhere archaeologically, any of the writings in the area at the time that would point to a mass number of human beings being held hostage against their will to build the pyramids for the evil-ass Negroes called Egyptians. No evidence. But they still say this is what grants them unending absolution for their participation in aggressions against others, right? It's everywhere if you care to see. And I say Christianity because that's how we learned this shit, was through Pure Lust, the book Pure Lust by Mary Daly. These pillars that hold up the whole structure, right? That has its, it's at least its immediate roots in Catholicism. The structure of sadomasochistic asceticism, of martyrdom, and of absolution. But they are not limited to Christianity. They are not limited to Catholicism. This was an effective weapon that every male in positions of power began to reproduce in their own little area. Yep. It was like, damn, that shit they doing over there in Rome We got this shit all wrong. How we oppressing, how we doing this shit, we got it all wrong. We need to reproduce their script. They did that shit. And then these melanated leaders all over the world began to reproduce what was obviously an efficient and effective tactic and strategy by the Roman Empire turned the Holy Roman Catholic Church. It's like, we've been going about this shit all wrong. We've been going about this shit all wrong. And so those pillars necessary to hold up these religious institutions, the religious institutions are what give birth to the state everywhere. The ideological, quote, spiritual beliefs are what give birth to the state everywhere on earth. And fundamental to the emergence of the state are these hardwired institutions, these pillars that hold up these institutions, known as sadomasochistic asceticism, martyrdom, and absolution. That's your trinity. That's your trinity. Sadomasochistic asceticism, martyrdom, and absolution. You understand? That's why glory killings. That's why honor killings of women in the Arab world, in India. That's why honor killings. You understand? That's why stories of how if you die in service of God, whoever that God is, Abraham, Allah, Yahweh, whatever the fuck his name is on any given day. That's why death in service to your God is the most profound thing that you can do. You liable to become a saint in your martyrdom. You liable to become a saint. You understand? You liable to be deified if you lose your life in service to whatever face the war god has at any given time. That's why martyrdom. And who is the one most targeted to be willing martyrs in service of the war god? Is it white people? Is it white people? Or is it dark-skinned Arabs? Told stories by a particular father god, of what? That if you die in service to our particular expression of God, guess what? You'll get 100 virgins in heaven or some shit. You understand? I'm just saying, that's why martyrdom. What is martyrdom? It's black, brown, red, and yellow people who voluntarily, through their patriotic expression, to prove to the white world that I too love America, so I'm willing to go kill and die in service of America. We know what martyrdom is. How many black, brown, red, and yellow babies of ours we have buried in service to America? The Godhead, America. The war god, America. How many of our children have we sacrificed to the American war god? We know what martyrdom is. We see it differently when we see, quote, people that we have accepted as infidels, them Arabs, them Muslims, you understand, them Japanese using their body and their plane to go and fly into some shit. It's easy for us to vilify and condemn what we perceive as obvious, crazy martyrs for, quote, God and country, but it ain't as easy to see it when the United States very first war that baptized this country as a legitimate country, right? That baptized this country in the lost lives of 250,000 men, the American Revolutionary War. To date, still the greatest number of men lost in service of America in a war, the Revolutionary War. I'm just trying to give you a word. You understand? Now, why you don't see it as a baptism, as a blood offering to the consecration of the American war god, that's what it was. You don't have to agree. I'm telling you what ritual looks like, how ritual is executed. You understand? Mary got a word, y'all. Mary stay having a word. Mary stay having a word. We have to change the narrative. We have to change the narrative. We can't be, let's see. You should read the book Spirits Came from Water. I see why they took us from our spirituality. The power of praying to your Ori versus this external God is, woo, yeah, powerful. Yep, I'm going to need to get that book. Greetings, Mary Yoshi. Long time no see. Yes, baby. So Robbie Makeda, email me that title because I got to get out of here. I'm playing games. I'm supposed to be in school. Child, I was supposed to be in school an hour ago. Now I got to go blow the road up. So Robbie Makeda, please email me that title so I don't forget it. So I'm gonna go ahead and close. I'm gonna stop reading there because I can't miss this class. I'm gonna stop reading there, and so email me if you have any questions, if you need to get a reading, if you need to get a wellness consultation, if you want to get a plan your 2025 reading, if you want, yeah, all of those things, email me at EvoEmeTemp, TEMP at gmail.com. EvoEmeTemp at gmail.com. Okay, do that. Consider making a contribution or a donation to the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. We have a ceremony coming up on the winter solstice. Okay, consider making a contribution for that. And then also visit my Etsy page, which is DaughterOfTheFates.etsy.com. DaughterOfTheFates.etsy.com. And everything on the page is 25% off until January 2nd. You're welcome. That's it. Now I gotta go. I know the last 3-4 lives I did, I'm always like running out the door at the absolute last minute. So I gotta go. I'll do another live. It's still early. I may do another live tonight. I'm telling you, I'm fighting like hell to finish this book. You feel me? I'm going to finish this book before the new year. That is a promise. That is a guarantee. But we fighting like hell through this book, child. Because I keep stopping. I keep trying to give y'all a word. You feel me? Anyway. So let me bookmark this. I hope to come back tonight to do another reading. In the meantime, gotta go. Love you all. See you later. Send me emails, whatever, and I will read them all and respond as soon as I can. Peace.